You want Vox or mine?
Mike.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay.
Walter, what's the signal when we have Dennis Ackley on?
Well, I have no idea who he is.
Hello?
Boy, yeah, look at that, 100%. They kind of
Yes, that I like those numbers.
Okay, we're on the air.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
Yeah, well, you must have thought that if you're live.
Pick up something like that.
No, actually, the
Hey, that's son.
the microphones are live, so I want to go on this.
There.
Hi.
Hi, good evening. I'm Donna Cowan, and I'm here tonight with Don Cowan, live at Channel 19, Morgan Hills Public Access Station. We're here on election night, November 8th, 2000. And Don, it's quite an election tonight, quite close.
Yeah, it really is. I think it's November 7th, but that's all right.
Oh, I'm a day ahead.
That's all right.
Yes.
Yeah, anyway.
It's the 7th.
And very important night. We just got here, just voted, and we have a number of candidates which we're going to basically talk a little bit about. And we've got results. This is the only station which will actually show council results and show the school board results. And so, have we gotten the results yet? Have we showed them yet on the screen? Let's take a look. I think a lot of these are absentee ballots, but
I think we're counting the absentee ballots right now, and it looks like can we have some results here?
Okay.
We're going to be getting the results in just a minute, but we have quite a few people from the town here ready to share in our results, and we have Mayor Kennedy here, who is our incumbent mayor, and we're going to be asking him some questions shortly about the race and also about some of the measures that he supports. As you know, there's been a lot of recent news about the traffic, the VTA, and of course the Sobrato School site for the new high school. And Mayor Kennedy will be addressing some of these issues. And Mayor, why don't you come tonight, and I want to congratulate you. If you would just share with us some of your impressions of the race. You can talk about the local race, the political race, and maybe you could do a few predictions for us on November 7th.
Okay, well, thank you, Donna. First of all, it's nice to be here. And, this has really been a tough campaign for me, personally. Actually, I feel very fortunate, and I want to thank the voters of Morgan Hill for supporting me in my reelection. I want to mention that first. Also wanted to comment, as more of an observer in this election, that I'm really proud to see that our local city council candidates ran very clean campaigns. I did not see any of the mudslinging and some of the negative campaign stuff that has been characterized some of the other campaigns. So I'm pleased that we've had that in Morgan Hill. And looking at some of the numbers that I've seen so far tonight, boy, it's really amazing how close so many of these races are. I see some of the absentee ballots for the Morgan Hill City Council race, and those numbers are very close. So I'll be watching that very, very closely to see how those results turn out. Donna, you mentioned the propositions and some of my views on those. I've been supporting Proposition 35, and I'm glad to see that it is winning. That will allow, actually will allow more competition of private sector consultants and contractors to be a part of public projects for agencies like Caltrans, the county, and cities as well. So that's good news. I'm also very pleased. I saw earlier on one of the election results, or some of the preliminary numbers. I guess at this point we're looking at strictly absentee ballots. So on Measure A, the transportation measure for Santa Clara County, that it was leading by a percentage of something like 70 to 30%. And it does require a 2/3 majority vote to win. So I'm very pleased to see that Measure A is leading. That will be, I believe it is our best immediate opportunity to provide some traffic relief. Although it addresses the BART extension and Caltrans electrification, the direct effect on those of us in South County will be the Caltrans electrification, and then it will also free up money for other local road and highway projects here in South County. So I'm glad to see that measure is winning, and boy, the presidential race is nip and tuck.
Pretty close.
So well, those are some of my initial thoughts, Donna.
Well, thank you very much for sharing. And I just have a couple of questions to ask you about the Valley Transportation, the VTA Authority. Can you comment on it? I read in the paper that you were a little displeased on the about the weight on the widening of the of 101. Can you
Donna,
elaborate on that? Or?
Yes, you've hit a real sore subject with me.
Okay.
And I'm on the board of directors of the VTA, but I'm very displeased with the schedule that the VTA has put forward on the widening of 101. As those of us who live here in Morgan Hill and in South County know, 101 is, the widening of 101 is the key to relieving the traffic congestion here in Morgan Hill. And it's critical that we get that project moving. And unfortunately, the VTA staff seems to be treating it as if it's a business as usual situation. And
I heard 2003 or something like that.
They're saying summer of 2003. Now, I'm convinced that that schedule can be improved, that there are ways that and measures that they can take to speed up the process. As a project manager in the construction industry, I know that there are fast-track techniques that could be used and should be used, must be used in this case, to get this project moving forward much more quickly. Some of the specific actions that I've taken as a member of the board of directors, I put on the agenda for our last meeting, which was last Thursday, an item to create some oversight boards to focus specifically on the widening of 101, Highway 152 safety projects, those Measure A and B projects that affect us here in South County, especially the 101 project. So this review board will put some more focus on doing those things that will speed up that project, such things as fast-track methods, looking for obstacles, where the VTA staff indicates that there's a delay for some reason. What can we as a board do to authorize some activity or some work to eliminate that obstacle to speeding up the schedule? So I'm going to be working directly on that, and I tried to get that committee in place next month in December, but because of the turnover in council members on primarily the city of San Jose, it'll be probably right after the first of the year that will be in force. This committee will be in place, working to do what we can to eliminate those obstacles to speeding up the widening of 101.
Okay, and those will, the committee will be made up of our Morgan Hill Council members, planning members.
What the proposed committee, it's called a Policy Advisory Board. It will have myself, the mayor of Gilroy, Supervisor Don Gage, and then a council member from the city of San Jose. Currently that would be Charlotte Powers because that's her district, but she's leaving office this year, so it'll be whoever replaces her. And looking at the numbers, it looks like Forrest Williams is leading in that San Jose council race, so it'll probably...
How many openings do they have, Mayor?
There'll be 4.
For in the San Jose Council?
Oh, San Jose City Council, not sure what the exact number is, but I know there are at least 4 that I know of who are being termed out.
Okay.
So
so it's important
at least
that
4.
we mesh with them and communicate with them closely,
Oh,
especially when it comes to
definitely.
this traffic problem.
Definitely, because Don, I don't know if you're aware of it or if your watchers are aware of it, but VTA Board of Directors is made up of representatives of all of the cities in Santa Clara County, and there are 12 of us on the board, and the individual board members are selected on the basis of population. So the city of San Jose, being the largest city, has 5 members on the VTA board. So they're the really big gorilla on the VTA board of directors. So, and the city of Morgan Hill has, we share our 1 vote with the cities of Gilroy and Milpitas.
Okay.
So in essence, it's 1/3 of a vote, but fortunately we rotate among our 3 cities the member who serves on the VTA board, and at this time it's my turn. I'm serving a 2-year term on the VTA board. So that's what the board is made up, and it's critical that we work very closely with the city of San Jose because they have so many votes on that board.
I appreciate your position on that one. I'm sure many of our viewers do, who are caught up in that horrible commute, daily commute. And tell me a little bit about the race as you see it this evening with the council, the city council members.
Well, I just see that we have some new numbers up on the board here, and I don't know, Don, you want to talk about this?
Sure. It looks like right now these are absentee ballots, but it looks like right now Hetty Chang is out in front with 950 votes, and then we have Cynthia Cook with 853 votes, and then Larry Carr with 733. This should be a very, very tight race. We have 2 incumbents and 1 Larry Carr on the school board, and so every vote will count, just like it is in the very tight national election. So right now I'll turn this back over to Donna, and I want to thank the mayor for being here, and I've got a few questions to ask the mayor too. So, anyways.
All right. Well, I'll let you sit in the hot seat.
Okay.
First of all, though, who is running for the school board? Let's take a look. We have Del Foster and Jan Masuda, Richard Van Rood, and George Panos. We don't have any results on that yet, but they will be coming in during the evening. And so we have our absentees on City Council. And Don, how does the State Assembly look?
Well, in the State Assembly, we have Jeff Denham, who's a Republican, and Simon Salinas, who's a Democrat, Roger Ver, who's a Libertarian, and J.J. Vogel, who's from the Reform Party. It looks like it'll probably be Denham and Salinas in a very tight race.
Very tight race there. This whole race is so exciting this evening.
It sure is.
My husband was saying on the way over here that this is one of the closest races since since 1960, and it was Nixon and Kennedy there. So,
I remember that well. That I was in college at that time, and I remember that race. That was, and it looks like it's going to be a very similar situation from what I've seen so far, where the electoral vote and the popular vote may be different, and I don't know what the latest numbers are, but they were sure close when I last looked at them.
Very close, yes. So, Don, do you have some questions to ask the mayor?
Yes, I do.
Why don't you sit over here, and we'll just I'll just move from the hot seat for you're really in the hot seat. Yeah.
Well,
Thank you.
Fortunately, since I'm running this time unopposed, this seat is not quite as hot as it has been in the past. I feel pretty good about that.
Well, the first question I'd like to ask you is, how did you get started in politics?
Well, started quite a while ago. I moved to Morgan Hill about 25 years ago, and not long after I moved here, I discovered that there was tremendous growth going on. Our schools were on double session. There was sewage flowing in the streets. There were a lot of problems with our infrastructure at that time. And I went to a meeting that was being held by the county to talk about changing the requirements to build on housing in the unincorporated areas of the county. They're talking about, the question was whether they should allow houses to be built on 2.5 acre lots or 5 acre, what would be the minimum lot size that would be used. And I expressed my views, and several others were at that same meeting. And after the meeting, we got together and we talked about Morgan Hill, and the group got together, and eventually, or not long after that, started to work on what eventually became Measure E, and that was Morgan Hill's first residential growth control ordinance. And it was really a result of the tremendous problems that we're having in Morgan Hill, the schools on double session, high schools, and so on. And so I worked on that campaign and continued to work. I was then appointed to one of the general plan update committees. Although I was actually living outside the city limits, I could not run for elected office, but I was eventually appointed to the Planning Commission, served on the Planning Commission for several terms, and then in the late 80s moved to the city of Morgan Hill, and not long after that I decided to run for city council, and I was elected to city council in 1990, and I've just continued to I find it very exciting. There's a lot that can be done. I find in Morgan Hill you really can make a difference, and that's one of the things that's really neat about our community. You can know your neighbors, you can know your community members, and you really can make a difference in Morgan Hill if you decide that you want to work at it and be a part of it.
So you were never student body ASB president or nothing?
No, I was not. The closest to that, I would say, I was our high school football team captain.
All right.
And president of our glee club at Santa Clara University, but never a student body president.
Maybe during intermission you can sing for us.
I don't think our watchers would want to hear me sing.
You want to remain mayor, right?
Well, how would a novice get started in politics, would you say?
Well, I think it starts by volunteering. It takes, first of all, it takes an interest. If there's something that you want to do, if you see a problem that you want to correct, I would encourage anyone who is interested in getting involved, start working on that problem. Volunteer. You can volunteer first as to work on a specific project or problem. The city also has a volunteer program, and I would encourage people to volunteer their time and energy there. Another good way is to get involved with the campaigns of someone who is running for an elected position, whether it's school board or city council or board of supervisors or Galvin College, board of trustees. Those are all good opportunities to, if you're not ready to run for elected office yourself, then work on someone else's campaign, and you can get a sense of what it takes to do it, and decide whether that's something that you would like to pursue. So that's what I would recommend. And then when you're ready, just run for a school board, run for city council, or another way that I did mention, and that is the city has a lot of commissions. We have a planning commission, we have a Parks and Recreation commission, we have a senior advisory commission, we have a youth advisory commission. I'm probably forgetting some of those commissions, but we also have a bicycle advisory commission. So there's something for just about anyone who would like to volunteer their time and energy. And we have the Library Commission, that's another one. I knew I was missing an important commission. We have wonderful volunteers that serve on our various commissions in Morgan Hill. I'm always amazed when we interview applicants for the different commissions at the caliber and the qualifications that the individuals have. Like we have, I think there is at least one PhD on our Library Commission, and there on our Parks and Recreation Commission, there's a manager in public works, and there are people that have their master's degree in recreation programs and so on. It's amazing to see the qualification, but I don't want to discourage people because of that. But there also is a need for those in the community who just have a strong interest in it and interest in serving and making our community a better community.
How do you balance politics and family life and a job? Is it very difficult to do?
Well, my wife Eileen is sitting right here.
Hi, Eileen.
And it is difficult, and oftentimes our private, personal time suffers because there is so much that we have to do, that I have to do, whether it's an event, it's a meeting, a late city council meeting, or it's a grand opening, or a meeting with whether it's a school board or a developer or someone. There is so much going on, and what I try to do is set aside a few days a week that are, or at least evenings that are dedicated for our getting to know each other and making sure that we have a personal life. But it's often hard to do. And Eileen will remind me that if there's a dinner that I need to go to, if there's any political part of it at all, then that doesn't count as our personal time. So And I can understand that because there's oftentimes someone there that wants to talk about an issue. So it's difficult, but we work at it.
Well, another question: when you're running for office, even a local office like city council, is it very expensive to run? And how do you raise money for even city council or for mayor?
Well, in a small city like Morgan Hill, it's still small enough that you can run a fairly effective campaign by concentrating on grassroots, by going door to door, getting out and meeting people. Morgan Hill is still small enough that you can do that without having to spend a lot of money. But what I find as you move up in the political ladder, so to speak, money becomes much more important. For example, the city of San Jose council members, it's not unusual for them to raise $100,000 or $200,000 for their campaign, whereas in Morgan Hill, I was just reading in the Morgan Hill Times recently some of the campaign expenditures that our council candidates have spent, and it ranges from anywhere from about $7,500 up to $15,000 to $20,000, and that is an issue. It's important in order to get, particularly if you're a new candidate, if you're one running for office for the first time, you have to get your message out to the public, and oftentimes that means mailers, getting the mailers out. As you get up into higher offices, whether it's at the Board of Supervisors or the state level, then you may want to do paid television commercials or paid radio time, and all of that costs a lot of money. So
I have a comment, Mayor. I've noticed we received, as being residents here from Morgan Hill, a lot of mailers during this election, and it seems to me that this must cost an awful lot of money. I don't recall this type of slick campaigning in years past. Is it just because of things are getting so much more competitive? Our area is growing. Politics are changing in our formerly small town. I just don't recall this in the past.
the answer is yes.
For city council, I was really amazed at all the
yes, it's all of those,
materials
Donna.
I received.
Our city is getting larger. Our population is becoming more sophisticated, and the the candidates that are running are excellent candidates. I think all of them are excellent candidates, and so the approaches that are being used, the mailers and so on, are what you would see in a good, well-run campaign. Another reason why you're seeing so much literature in Morgan Hill, particularly at the state assembly race, the 28th Assembly District race, that is a seat that is a critical seat for both the Democratic and Republican parties. They're both trying to win that seat. It's typically, historically, been a Democratic seat. Rusty Reyes held it for many years, and the percentage of voters in the 28th Assembly District is more heavily Democratic, but yet it's been held for the last 6 years by Peter Furcetta, a Republican. And so the Democrats are spending a lot of money to try and win that seat, and the Republican Party is as well. So you're seeing a lot of money flowing into this local race, and so that's one reason why you see so much information in the mail. As well as there are some very critical issues, Measure A and Measure B, that also there are a lot of funds being spent to try and win votes for those two measures.
You are a proponent. You in our last program, you were a strong proponent of Measure A, which is the once again the transportation
right.
issue.
Right.
And for our viewers, just in a nutshell, I know there are people going to be tuning in throughout the evening. Could you just give us just a small little summary of A and B again?
Okay.
Measure A and B.
Well, Measure A will generate, it will extend, first of all, let me say that it's an extension of the half-cent sales tax. It's not a new tax. It goes into effect in the year 2006, I think it is, when the current half-cent sales tax ends. And it's important that it be put in place now because projects can start even before the 2006 date, because bonding and federal commitments and state commitments can be made based on the approval of Measure A. So it provides that half-cent sales tax, which is a 30-year tax, will extend for 30 years, and will raise approximately $6 billion. About $2 billion of that will go to extend BART from Fremont to San Jose and Santa Clara. In addition, there will be a people mover that will connect BART to the airport. In addition to that, there's approximately $650 million for Caltrain electrification, double tracking Caltrain service to South County to Gilroy, all the way up to San Francisco, and so that is a very important measure.
Okay, we have some numbers here. Measure A, 1/2 cent transit sales tax for BART extension.
Oh my gosh.
Completed precincts 0 out of 1341. The vote count is a yes on that. Don, you want to read that for us?
Yeah, it looks like the yes count is 33,965. It's getting 66% of the vote, and no is 17,060. So it's really leading 2-1. It looks like if this holds up, it's definitely going to be a very, very positive.
Well, Don, that measure does require a 2/3 majority vote, so it's exactly right on the 2/3
Wow.
majority. So that is so close that it needs that 66.7% in order
Wow.
to win.
And how are we doing now? We have the numbers on Measure B, the Clean Safe Creek and Natural Flood protection, and the completed precinct 0 out of 1341. The vote count on that, Don, could you read it for us?
Yeah, the vote count here is 30,419, yes, 62.3% of the vote, and no, 18,436, or 37.7%. And Mayor Kennedy, we need 2/3 there too?
Yes, we do. That's a tough one.
That
is
yeah.
critical. Measure B is critical for flood control work here in South County. As you know, we've had a problem with flooding maybe not the last year, but the previous 2 years,
Terrible.
and particularly in our downtown area in the south end of our city. So it's very important that this measure passes. It would extend the benefit assessment district, the assessment tax, so parcel tax, so that these much-needed flood control and also projects to ensure that our creeks are clean and safe will be done. So first of all, I'm disappointed that it's slightly below the 2/3 majority that it needs. And I hope
what
that
accounts for that, in your opinion? Why do you think it's a little bit lower than it should be? Is that publicity on it, or?
There has been some negative publicity on it. I think anytime there's a tax, it's difficult to get a 2/3 majority for the tax. Particularly in the case of a parcel tax, I think one of the concerns there is that property owners have to pay for the property tax, and they may not be the ones that benefit from that parcel tax. Maybe an absentee owner who lives somewhere else. It puts more of a burden on the landowner, the property owner, And that might be the reason why it's having a little more of a difficult time. That's just my guess.
Okay, well, hope it passes, especially during this time of year.
Keep my fingers crossed.
I think I heard that we have some of the results of the Gavilan trustees race. Is that correct? Okay, Gavilan Joint Board, Area 1. It says vote for 1. Completed precinct 0 out of 88. We have the count for the vote count now, the percentages. I can see them right here. Herbert Peckham is in the lead with 1,279 votes. That's 43%. Next is Mark Dover. 996 is the vote count. Percentage 33.5%. And then following, third is Manly Willis with, I believe, a vote count of 702, 23.6%. That is for the Gavilan Joint Commission Board. Okay, and we have some other results that we can project here. We have the Gavilan Joint Commission Board Area 2. It says vote for 2. Laura Perry is in the lead with a vote count of 2,239, 49.8%. And we have Leonard Washington with a vote of 1,294, 28.8%. And third is Mark Hinkle, 961 votes at 21.4%. So as you can see, Laura Perry there is clearly in the lead. And we have the, again, this is, Don, can you read this one coming up?
Yeah, it looks like Gavilan Joint CCD Board Area 3 vote for 1. And it's Thomas Bren with 2,006 votes, or 69%, and Ruben Lopez with 902 votes.
Okay. Now, what's the update on our presidential election? Is anyone in the lead? Is it still neck and neck? Does anyone have those scores?
We just have the
Local.
Okay.
Okay.
So, Mayor Kennedy, I was going to ask you, a lot of this money that you spend on campaigning, can you write it off on your taxes if any of it's your own personal money?
Good question.
No, you can't. Political contributions are not acceptable tax write-offs. I wish they were, but
Even for your own campaign?
as far as I know, I don't think that you can. I need to look into that. I don't think so, though.
How did you go about getting people to support you? Actually, I mean, I know you have, you've been, you have a clear campaign organization, but how did you find your supporter? How does one go about finding supporters?
Well, that's a good question. When I first decided to run for elected position, I had, first of all, developed a track record by having served on the Planning Commission and as chair of the Planning Commission. So people knew who I was, and I asked some of my friends and those that I had worked with what they thought about my running for city council. And so it's a matter of building relationships. That's, as you know, that's so important in anything. Mm-hmm. It's building relationships and friendships. And so I asked some of my friends and people I had worked with on other campaigns what they thought of my running for city council, and I got their support. So I decided to do it, and did end up running. And then the campaign itself is it's a lot of hard work. You do a lot of door-to-door precinct walking, and in every election that I've been involved with, except for the last two where I've been fortunate enough to run unopposed, I've gone door-to-door precinct walking, and it's an excellent way to find out what is on the public's mind. what are the issues that they're faced with. And I'm always amazed at what the issues are. And a person's perception, what you read in the paper, what you think, is what is on the public's mind, is very often wrong. And you don't really find that out until you get out there and talk to the electorate, talk to the citizens, and see what are the things that are really bothering them. And so that's how I did it. My initial campaign was a grassroots program. I got support from a lot of friends and people who were willing to help me with it, with the campaign, and ended up winning my first election. And so far it's been good. I did run for state assembly in 1994 in the primary election, but was unsuccessful in that race. So otherwise I've been fortunate to do well.
Do you have any aspirations for running for state assembly again, since
Well,
you're doing so well here as mayor?
I'm keeping my options open. There's a lot of work to be done here in Morgan Hill. Prior to the last election, I decided I had a choice to run for Board of Supervisors or to run for mayor of the city of Morgan Hill. And I decided to run for mayor because I felt there were just too many critical issues in Morgan Hill at that time that needed to be dealt with. And I felt that I was in a position to address those issues and to make an impact. So I felt it was more important for me to run for mayor of Morgan Hill. But I'm keeping my options open for the future, whether it's the Board of Supervisors or State Assembly. It's my understanding that we will be redistricting the State Assembly districts, and as well as the State Senate districts, and that will be coming up probably next year. It may create an opportunity for another assembly seat. The 28th Assembly District, which is the one that I ran in 1994, is an enormous district geographically. It extends all the way up to the edge of Milpitas, clear down to the San Luis Obispo County line.
Gee, that far.
It is incredible. And to cover all of the, to try and do a door-to-door campaign in that district is extremely, if not impossible to do. Although I understand Rusty Arrayas nearly did that when he ran for state assembly back in the, I guess that was in the 80s. But that's an extremely large district, and I intend to keep my options open for the future. But right now we have a lot of exciting things and important things that need to be done for the city of Morgan Hill, such things as getting our new library built, getting our community center finished, and one that's very important to me is restoring our hospital and restoring medical services to Morgan Hill. And hopefully finding a place for the Christian College in Morgan Hill as well. But I do want to save the hospital facility for medical purposes, and I'm going to do what I can. It's such a valuable asset. We have a critical need for emergency medical services in Morgan Hill, and I'm going to do as much as I can to try and restore that hospital in Morgan Hill.
It does seem a shame to have the facility there and not use it for medical purposes. To make that into a school site really doesn't make a lot of sense to me. That when it's set up for a hospital, it should be, and especially since we're in need of.
Well, to build that hospital today as a hospital, it would probably cost $50 to $70 million, and as you know, the city did make an offer to acquire it. We offered the price that was being asked by CHW, but we were rejected for two reasons. Number one, our price was not the highest price, but also because CHW did not want to sell it to anyone who would use it for medical purposes. They purposely
CHW is
Catholic Healthcare
okay.
West. They're the owners, the former owners or owners of that facility, and they put in a restriction that they would not sell it to anyone who would use it for medical purposes. And that's an issue that I've raised with the state attorney general, and that's, I know we're getting off the subject here a little bit, but since it is, CHW is a charitable organization, can they in fact restrict the sale of that hospital to a competing medical service provider? That's, the state attorney general is looking into that question as we speak.
Do you have any idea who might be some of the competing medical?
Well, we have a proposal from a specialized surgical hospital. There are proposals. We've talked to Kaiser. Kaiser has a need for some of their facilities. What it's going to take is a combination of doctors groups to utilize the medical office building. The idea of a specialized surgical hospital is good because they will be able to do it financially, and they want to do it. We have an offer by a specialized surgical hospital to operate a portion of the hospital to reactivate its license. What is the difficult part is the emergency services or 24-hour urgent care. That part is extremely expensive, and that is the primary reason why so many hospitals are closing today, is because the medical industry and the hospital industry is in such a state of turmoil that the federal funding for indigent care and Medicare and other programs like that is inadequate to pay for the actual costs to provide those emergency medical services. So my hope is that we could restore perhaps 18-hour urgent care to the facility in a combination with doctors' offices and also a specialized surgical hospital. And the other component is for the acute care beds, either lease those out to perhaps Kaiser or to a convalescent hospital so that they could use those beds for acute care services. So it would take a combination of groups to pull it together. And my goal would be to do this without the city having to we don't want the city to get into the medical business. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it needs to. There are ways to do it. We're currently looking at a medical services or healthcare foundation that would raise some money and management to provide the leadership and the management to operate such a facility.
Would that be a state, a county organization, or?
It would be a nonprofit, private nonprofit organization.
Okay.
Well, Mayor, I was reading the paper tonight, and I noticed that El Toro Youth Center or Soccer Center there might be moved to San Martin, and we might have the largest soccer complex in the state of California. Is that going to happen, or what?
Well, that's an issue that I'm very much concerned about. As you know, our Morgan Hill Soccer Complex has been extremely successful in not only providing wonderful family-centered sports activities for our youth, but it also brings in a lot of dollars to our local businesses. It provides a name recognition for the city of Morgan Hill. Morgan Hill is known throughout Northern California for our soccer complex. And I was there, happened to be there this last weekend because I wanted to see firsthand how it was doing. And there were two teams playing in a tournament there from Chico and Butte, California, which is way up north. And they had come down to our facility for this tournament. And that's not unusual. It's common to see teams from all over Northern California come here. So the city is trying to find a way to acquire that site. We would love to be able to acquire the soccer complex. If we can't afford to acquire that site, then we will look to acquire a site in another location. And we're looking at several possibilities. One might be in conjunction with the proposed Sobrato High School site, because it is an open space use. Another alternative, we're looking at other possible locations throughout the city. But I think that we need to find a way to save either that soccer complex or build an equivalent soccer complex in Morgan Hill. To have, if the CYSA decides that they want to move to San Martin into a larger facility, that doesn't mean that we cannot continue with our soccer complex in Morgan Hill or an equivalent one to what we have. And there is such a tremendous need for soccer facilities, for tournaments, that the studies that we've done show that there's no question that we will be able to utilize a soccer complex. And also it would free up more of the fields for our own local teams, which is something that I think is very important for us to do.
Can you mention also a little bit about recreational facilities here, if you're planning on expanding them for the youth, and how what you shared activities perhaps with the Y or other other organizations here in town? Are you planning on expanding recreational facilities for the youth?
Well, that's a subject near and dear to my heart, Don. I don't know if our viewers are aware, but in the early 1990s, the city went through a tremendous crisis as far as our financial situation was concerned. We had lost the utility tax in Morgan Hill. There was a recession, and at the same time, the state decided to take a large portion of our property tax revenue and shift it to what was called an educational reimbursement augmentation fund. And it saved the schools, and it was very helpful in providing much needed funding for schools, but it did leave cities and local governments and counties very much in bad shape as far as their economic revenues were concerned. So as a result of that, the combination of all of those things, we had to lay off a third of our city staff, including firefighters, police officers, all across the board. We had to eliminate our Parks and Recreation Commission. And fortunately, we've been able, over the last years, because of the growth in our revenue, the success that we've had in attracting businesses to Morgan Hill, the city is financially healthy. We've built a healthy reserve. We restored all of the commissions that had been disbanded, and actually added some to further involve the community in the processes. In addition, we've passed the redevelopment agency extension, which provides funding for very much needed recreational facilities. And we did a visioning process, it's been probably 4 years ago now, that showed that the greatest need, the public's vision of the greatest need for facilities in Morgan Hill was for recreational facilities. Things like an aquatic center, gymnasium, a youth center, a sport complex, playing fields like soccer and so on. And then other areas where that were addressed were the need for a senior center, a youth center, infrastructure improvements, and also economic development. Those are all part of that visioning process. But the number one need that was identified was recreational facilities. And we're now on the verge of building those much needed recreational facilities, starting with the community center. As you've noticed, the trees have been cut down. We're getting ready to move the old Morgan Hill School. It'll be moved to its new location out on Yagas, and it will recycle that building. That's what I call a win-win-win-win. There are about 5 winners in that project. The Historical Society and those who value our historical heritage win because it saves that resource. The Cardin Elementary School gets a new, an old school that will be recycled and rebuilt to current standards as a school facility. the city gets a location for its community center, the community, I should say. We also, at the same time, acquired the small old church building on that site. That church community will get a new church site and a new church facility. We'll restore that building, the old church building, relocate it, and convert it to a small community playhouse on the corner of 5th and Monterey. So the South Valley Civic Theater will have their plays there. So they win. The church wins, the community wins, the school wins, community wins. That's 5.
Wow.
That's 5 winners.
Situation. What is the cost of refurbishing the school? To me, it seems like it might. I've heard from contractors that it's almost easier just to raise a building and start from scratch. Is this going to be more costly because it's a historical building? I understand there were some problems with asbestos, and I'm sure that's been taken care of, but isn't it a little bit more expensive to restore an old building like that rather than
Yes.
build a new one?
Yes, Donna. It's very expensive, and that's we looked at trying to find a way to use the old school as the new community center, and we couldn't find a way that would really make it work. The spaces were broken up in a different way.
Sure.
Excuse me. That we just couldn't get it to work. But as we discovered when we refurbished and rebuilt, actually I say we, it was actually the Morgan Hill Historical Society that rebuilt the Village Miramonte, the old
Yes.
Hiram Morgan Hill House.
It's beautiful now. There was
North
quite
Monterey.
a controversy, I remember, at one time.
Yes, and the Historical Society has really taken over that responsibility. They've done a wonderful job. The city's redevelopment agency helped them to do it. We've provided some of the funding to help get it done. And that's become a wonderful community resource, so we're very pleased that was done. But to get to your point, the cost of renovating and rebuilding the Morgan Hill School is going to be expensive. And the numbers, if I recall the numbers correctly, it's anywhere from $1 million to $2 million. But it'll be far cheaper for a private contractor to do it than if the city were to do it. Mm-hmm. So that's one reason why I'm happy to see it in the hands of a private entity that will be able to restore it. And they can do it at their own pace. They can do it at the level that makes sense for them. Whereas if the city were to do it, there are standards and criteria that we would have to meet.
This is a private school, you said.
Cardin Elementary School
Okay,
is a
so-
private school.
Yeah, that is better, actually. And it's nothing like it is a beautiful building, I must say, so that'll be nice.
Looks a little ragged right now.
Yes, but
it's probably in the worst state that you'll ever
Sure.
see it. But when
the basic lines and architectural lines are there to see still.
That's correct. You should see some of the old pictures of it. It was a beautiful school when it was first built,
Sure.
and hopefully they'll bring that back.
I think we have some
Yeah, well,
new
actually,
results, do we?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Don, why don't you take care of those for us?
It looks like Measure A, the 1/2 cent transit sales tax for BART extension. Yes count is 48,743,
Yes.
and the mayor's putting his thumbs up.
That's
All right.
Good news.
67.7%, and we need the 66 and 2/3%. So we're over there so far. 72% of the precincts reporting. It is great news. For
72
everyone-
of 1,341 precincts.
Right, and especially everyone who commutes out there on the road. And let's see, Measure B, Clean Creek, Safe Creek, and natural flood protection. We have 72 of 1,341 precincts reporting. And it's, yes, 43,624. We're at 63.4%. We need a little bit more, about another almost 4% there and the no is 25,166, and it's 36.6%. I think we have some numbers also, absentee ballots for Morgan Hill School Board. And do we have that? Oh, we're gonna we're gonna keep reading this right here. Okay, let's.
Well,
I'll just.
Why don't we go ahead and read
Okay,
the...
off the board up here, looks
Morgan
like
Hill.
for some absentee ballots, we've got Del Foster at 1,294, Jan Masuda at 1,305, Richard Van Root at 777, and George Panos 1,211. So again, that's probably going to be fairly close. So this is just like the national election. School board's going to be close, city council's going to be close, and either Measure A and Measure B. So it's going to be a long night for everyone. And there it's on the screen there for us now. Jan Masuda with 1,405 votes. Looks like absentee votes and one precinct reporting out of 51. She has 28.5% of the vote. Del Foster, 1,385. Both Jan and Del are incumbents, and George Panos has 1,297 with 26.4%.
Can you really make a prediction with those right now? With 1 out of 51, it said precincts.
Very not unless you got the exit poll people and actually talk to people. I mean, that's how they do it nationally. They'll have 1% from a state like California, and they predict Gore the winner here in California. But they've also made a bit of a mistake in Florida. It'll be interesting to see what happens later on. Yeah, I mean, it's so. Anyways, unless you have those exit polls for us, and we don't have it, it's going to be a long night. But it's at least it looks positive, and for Measure A. So.
And we very much appreciate Mayor Kennedy sharing his views with us this evening on our local public access station, Channel 19. And I want to thank all the volunteers this evening who are doing such a wonderful job spending their free time for the community to help you understand our local election results. I mean, there's nothing like having firsthand information, and we have it for you right here. So once again, we are Channel 19, and Mayor Kennedy has been very gracious to join us tonight. For those of you who have tuned in earlier, he's given out a lot of information about Measure A, Measure B, and some of the concerns of Morgan Hill and what he plans to do for our town. Very busy man. I don't know. You're like an encyclopedia, Mayor Kennedy. You certainly know a lot about everything as far as this town, and of course, your lovely wife Eileen is with you here. And we're talking earlier about your private time together, and we're very fortunate that you have such a nice, understanding wife that allows you to spend so much time for our behalf.
Well, thank you, Donna, and thank you, Eileen, too.
Yes. So anyway, we just went over some of the election results, and we will be going over them throughout this evening. We'll be here till approximately, they said in the paper, 12 o'clock. Right. I thought it was 11. Now, Mayor Kennedy, you don't have to stay this long. I think for some of the time we just might project some of the numbers, but we will be having some, perhaps some of our candidates, some of the candidates join us this evening, and if anyone wants to come down and share with us some information about this election or any of the candidates, you're certainly welcome to come here and help us out.
Well, it looks like, Donna, on the screen we have Morgan Hill City Council, and we've got obviously the absentee ballots and plus one precinct of 25 reporting, and Hetty Chang has 1,055 votes, or 37.1%, and Cynthia Cook 946, or 33.2%, and Larry Carr with 845, or 29.7%. And you mentioned a few thank yous. I also want to thank Kajiko's Nursery, the flowers that are
or
right
Kahiko's, either way.
Okay. They're a fabulous nursery over on Hill Avenue, and they're the ones who supplied the flowers and the balloons tonight, and have always.
They've been more than generous, haven't they? I mean, for our school, for I know Live Oak High School and many of the school functions, they've always been so willing to share of their beautiful flowers and time with us. We want to thank them very much, and that's I say Cahicos, you say Cajicos, whatever. It's all a matter of enunciation, I guess. But we want to thank them very much. Also, a little bit of background about our candidates. We have Dell Foster, who is on the governing board. He's an incumbent for the Morgan Hill Unified School District. And he is a graduate of our Morgan Hill Unified School District. Again, he looks like he's doing all right in the election. What are the numbers again?
Well,
for school board?
It looks like Dell has 1,294, and then Jan has 1,305 for school board. So. And both Jan and Dell are incumbents, so you would think that they would do fairly well. So.
And how long is the term for school board? Is it 2 years, 4 years?
I think that's a 4-year term.
It's a 4-year term. So yes, he said during the last 4 years that he's been on. So this would be his second term. Okay, and I believe he is an attorney in town also.
Yes.
And then we have another incumbent, Jan Masuda. Who I'm not quite sure how long he has been on the school.
Jan.
I'm sorry, Jan Masuda, how long she has been on the school board.
This is her, she's just finishing her 4th year, so it was her first term.
Okay.
She's running for her second term.
Second term.
Okay. And we have some updated numbers actually on the screen there, Donna. Jan Masuda has 1,509, or 28.5% of the votes. Dell Foster, 1,492, 28.2%. George Panos has 1,408, 26.6%, and Richard Van Rod has 880 votes. So, again, a very good race. And do we have some more results? I'm sure we do. Well, we'll get some more on the screen here soon. Okay, now we got an update on Gavilan College Joint Board. Herbert Peckham with 1,472, or 41.5%, and Mark Dover with 1,244, 35%, and Manly Willis with 831, or 23.4%. And the next one, Gavilan, okay.
Community College Board,
right.
Again.
Laura Perry, and I believe she was on the board before.
Oh, yes,
and
she has
been.
And
for
also
years. Good name recognition in the community. So you can see she's leading with 2,618 votes, 49%, and then Leonard Washington, 1,520, 28.7%, and Mark Hinkle with 1,158.
And that is for Area 2, for the community college.
That's correct. Right.
I think we have a few more numbers here. Can you roll that? For Area 3, for the Gavilan Joint Community College District Board, in the lead we have Thomas Breen with 68% of the votes, 2,368, and then following is Ruben Lopez at 1,083, 31.4% of the votes. And so far there are 3 completed precincts out of 88. So we have a ways to go. Now it's kind of interesting how these results are handled. They're not really they're counted by individuals, by computers, where they're delivered someplace. How does it work? You can tell us.
Well, I can give you a little bit of information, but probably not the whole story. From what I've seen, we have the votes are obviously collected at the precincts, then taken over, usually to City Hall. Okay. We have an area that is designated for collecting the votes, and it's a very rigidly controlled process. Obviously, it has to be for
Sure.
security and confidentiality of the voting process. There are people who have specific responsibilities for the votes. They collect them and then they take them up to the Santa Clara County voter registration office, and they're counted there. And the exact counting process, I'm not sure, but it's some sort of a computerized process,
Sure.
I would imagine. And typically, having been involved in a fair number of elections over the last few years, what I see is the absentee ballots always obviously come in first, and so you'll get those results, and that's all you'll get for the first several hours after the polls are closed. And then usually after about 10 o'clock or 9:30, the precinct tallies will start coming in. And with this election, I understand that they expect some of the poll workers, precinct work, voter volunteers, are saying that they're expecting an incredibly high voter turnout, 75 to 80% perhaps voter turnout. That will probably slow down the process, meaning it'll take longer to count the votes, and so I'm sure that there'll be, and if it's a close race, it'll take even longer. But as you can see now, the numbers are trickling in, and it's going to be a while, I would imagine, before a lot of the results are total.
Okay.
Yeah, just even the precinct where we were at Jackson Elementary School, they said it looks like they're going to be setting a record tonight for.
Already they said they had 65%. That's pretty good.
Well, that was at around 5 o'clock.
About 5 o'clock.
5
we were
o'clock,
voting,
and they were
yeah.
they think that they'll get over 75% and probably set a record. So.
Same in our precinct. They were expecting 75 to 80% voter turnout, which is really good.
Yeah, it's excellent. I had a question with the new census that was been taken in just a few months back. How is that going to affect Morgan Hill, or get any more dollars for Morgan Hill? Is it going to change the boundaries, obviously, for maybe some of the state assembly, or how does that work actually?
Well, the answer is yes. It will. The data is used for a lot of purposes. It will help us. It'll help the state to determine how much property tax revenue and other revenue will come to the city, since that's based on population numbers. It will also be very important for determining when they redistrict the state for whether it's congressional seats or state Senate or state Assembly or U.S. Senate. The census data will be used to determine population numbers, and that information will be very important. It's critical for the redistricting issues that will be coming up next year, as I understand it.
So Morgan Hill might just get more money from the pot from the state just because it's reflected in the census and the number more basically citizens here in Morgan Hill. Is that what you're saying?
Right. And for a fast-growing city like Morgan Hill, it's extremely important because we need that. Our population has grown so fast. We need accurate information on what the population is to determine what's our fair share of revenue for the various programs that provide revenue to the city. And for the city, our primary sources of revenue are more recently now it's sales tax is our number one source of revenue. Next comes property tax, and another one that's very important to us at the local level in the city is the vehicle license fees. And a lot of our general fund budget is about, which is the budget that funds police, fire services, and the fundamental parks and recreation programs, administration, so on. Our primary fund is a general fund, which has a annual budget of about $12 million. Our total budget is probably closer to 65 to 70 million per year, if you count all of the funds that we have, like the sewer system and the water systems and so on. But the primary fund, the general fund, relies, number one, on sales tax revenue, secondly, on property tax, then the next is vehicle licensing fees, and then a fourth that is now becoming very important for us is the transient occupancy tax, often called the TOT, which is about, I think our rate here in Morgan Hill is 10%. So, and that's good for, that's one reason why motels, hotels are good for Morgan Hill, because we get the transient occupancy tax. 10% of the cost of staying in that motel goes to our local city. So we get all of the benefits with but very little of the cost associated with that visitor. And we're seeing, as we've built more hotels in Morgan Hill and we've become a popular place to visit, both by our industries and also because the soccer complex brings a lot of tourists to our community, that our transient occupancy tax has gone up a lot. I don't know how I got off on that, but based on your question.
No, yeah, well, it was not.
The census question.
It's a census question.
Right. Does Morgan Hill get to keep all the sales tax, or is it a certain percentage and some of it goes back to the state? And do we get to keep all our property tax, or again, does that certain percentage to Morgan Hill and a lot of it go back to the state?
We get a very small percentage of the sales tax, and I think it's like, I don't have the exact number, but it's like 2 cents on the dollar. It's a very small percentage of the total sales tax. Our property tax share that the city gets is only like about 10 or 13%. That's also a very small percentage of the total property tax. Most of the property tax goes for schools, and so our share of the taxes at the local city level is really quite small.
When I know we have the results for the state assembly. Are they coming up fairly soon? Do we have those ready? District 28, we have so far completed precincts 4 out of 143, and in the lead we have just Republican Jeff Denham at 53% of the vote, followed by Simon Salinas, Democrat, 2,827 votes at 44.1%. And Roger Ver, Ver,
And it's Simone Salinas and Roger Ver.
Oh, Simone, I'm sorry, I stand corrected there. Simone Salinas, 122 and 1.9%. And then J.J. Vogel at 67 votes. Well, he's in the running at 1%. So we have quite a range there. And in the lead, Jeff Denham.
Okay, do we have any other new results, school or city council coming up?
While we're talking about that, I could comment a little bit about the 28th Assembly District race. That's a very important race, and I know both candidates, Simone and Jeff, as I mentioned earlier. I know both of them. They've been here a lot in our community, courting our votes, and it's really interesting. It's going to be very important to see how that shakes out. That I thought that race would be much closer, and I'm a little bit surprised to see that Jeff has taken the early lead, that Jeff Denham has taken the early lead, but that we won't know.
I understand he has a lot of backing.
Well, also you got to remember, absentee ballots are fairly conservative, and a lot of the Republicans generally, send in absentee ballots. So it's early. It's early, and I suspect there's still going to be a very, very close race.
Be interesting to see which precincts those are that are reporting, because it is such a large district, and both Jeff Denham and Simone Salinas are from Salinas, that general area, and so if those precincts are from Santa Clara County, say Evergreen or Morgan Hill or wherever, it may totally skew the end result in a different direction. Who knows what's going to happen? I think Salinas will be the key. The city of Salinas will be the key to this election, but we'll see. As I understand it, the 28th Assembly District has three. At least when I ran in that district, had three major sections. One was generally the Salinas area and the surrounding community in Monterey County. Then the Santa Clara County portion of the district, Garoy, Morgan Hill, and South San Jose Evergreen area was a very large portion of the district. And then the third would be Hollister, Watsonville, and the intermediate area. Those cities constitute another part of the district. So, with a small number of precincts reporting, it would be very hard to predict what's going to happen in that race. So it'll be interesting to see.
Also, and even at the 28th State Assembly District, I didn't really notice any real negative campaigning. Did you? Toward the end, I think, Don, you'd mentioned there were a couple of instances but on the whole, I thought it was.
Yeah, it was fairly positive. Every now and then, there's some hit mails that come out from different candidates and negative campaigning.
Do you
and
think it works? Negative campaigning.
Let's ask the mayor what he thinks.
Does that work, in your opinion?
Unfortunately, it does. Unfortunately, it does. And what is so tragic about that is oftentimes in the last minute, the 11th hour, someone could send out a hit piece that is totally wrong, and the opposing candidate will not have a fair opportunity to rebut that.
Right.
And
oftentimes it's hard to rebut that, even when it is absolutely a lie. Once that idea gets into the voter's mind, they just, for some reason.
Well, you talked about, was there a lot of mudslinging in the 28th Assembly District? I think there was. I think there was a lot of negative. That campaign was much more negative than what I would expect from the candidates.
Right.
I'm disappointed with some of the negative stuff, rather than focusing on the issues.
Mm-hmm.
Candidates should focus on the issues. I know it's oftentimes not as exciting or glitzy or as interesting as the electorate would like to see it, but that's the most important thing that has to be addressed is the issues. What is the candidate's position on those important issues? And if the campaign gets off attacking individuals on other unrelated issues, that's negative campaigning.
Hominem.
That's right.
Well, Mayor, I was noticing in the national race, as an example, with Gore and Bush, and there was some negative campaigning, but many times they said it wasn't from their camp. I mean, it wasn't from the Bush camp or the Gore camp. It might have been from the Republican National Committee or from the Democratic National Committee or some splinter group. And I'm wondering, do you think that could be the case here, or do you think this is really coming from, Jeff Denham's, inner circle and Simon Salinas's inner circle, and they actually made a decision on making negative campaigning one of their issues?
Well, I think the candidate has the ultimate responsibility to address negative campaigning. It's up to the candidate to take ownership for anything that is published on his behalf, or even attacking the opponent. you know, when I ran in the primary for state assembly, there was a consultant that came to me and he said, you know, I can help you. I do negative campaigning, and there are people that specialize in that.
Huh?
And you know, being fairly new to partisan politics, that was something I didn't expect, and it kind of turned my stomach because you know, I felt like I didn't want to touch this person.
Right.
But that is it's become all too common nowadays. And you know, I wanted to talk a little bit about campaign reform, and I think that is really the answer. We really need to do something to address campaign reform. It's a major problem. It's a difficult problem to solve because you know, you don't want to limit campaign expenditures because you know, it denies that the individual candidates opportunity to do what they want. I mean, to get their message out, I should say. But on the other hand, I think there should be limits on contributions so that a special interest group cannot, by throwing a whole lot of money at a candidate or an issue, influence the decision that candidate or issue, the vote on that issue. Unfortunately, it's become far too common for money to determine the outcome of elections. And you know, I think we need to do some major reforms to restore the credibility of the voting process so that the voters are in charge of the elections.
Good point. Well said. And I think we have some results on District 15. What was that? Something happened to the results. Okay. Don, you want to take that one?
Okay, for state senator, District 15, it looks like Bruce McPherson, the Republican, has 3,813 votes, so about 60%. Anselmo Chavez, the Democrat, 2,327, or 36% of the vote, and Gordon Sanchez, Libertarian, 131, 2% of the vote, and David Rosencrantz.
We
thank
apologize
you.
for mispronunciations here.
Right, 81.
It's Gordon Sachin.
Sachin, yeah.
Thank you.
Sachin.
Thank you.
Tough one to pronounce.
It's Representative 15 that I should have stopped at. That's what I meant to stop at.
Okay.
Okay. United States Representative District 15. This is a hotly contested race. Looks like 103 precincts reporting out of 492, with Mike Honda, the Democrat, with 30,563 votes and 51.7%. Jim Cunin, the Republican, with 26,789, or 45.4%. This is the seat that Tom Campbell gave up and is running for the United States Senate seat against Dianne Feinstein, and a lot of people have come there and campaigned for Mike Honda and Jim Cunin. I believe the president was here for Mike Honda, and there was a number of people that came in for Jim Cunin too. So it'll be interesting to see. It looks fairly close. And then also we have Ed Weimers, the Libertarian, with 1,020 votes, and Douglas Gorney has 693 votes. So it's still early, but it looks like Mike Honda, the Democrat, has the lead with 51.7%.
Thank you, Don. Oh, we have some more here.
Okay, United States Representative, and we have 73 of 468. Zoe Lofgren, the Democrat, 25,064, and of course she's the incumbent, and with 70%. Horace Chan, the Republican. Jean. 8,872. with looks like 24% of the vote, and Dennis Umpris, the Libertarian, 1,092, and Edward Klein with 585. I predict that Zoe's going to win that.
Yeah, good prediction. You'll bet on that?
Yeah, I'll bet my house on that one, Donna.
Yeah, it's half, yeah.
Actually, it's half yours. So.
Really sticking your neck out.
Again, thank you for joining us this evening. This is our election night, and it's November 7th, general election. We're here at live on Channel 19, Morgan Hill's public access station, and we're very thankful for the volunteers who've spent the majority of their evening helping us out, and I think they're doing a great job, so we should give them a hand on that. We'd like to, a lot of times the people behind the scenes are working the hardest. You just can't get the information out without our people at the computers and the cameras and the people set up. And of course, Mayor Kennedy, you are more than generous with your time this evening, you and your wife Eileen, for informing the voters about all these very important issues and telling us what it's really like to be in public life and sharing with us your experience and
Thank you.
and some of the things that we have to look forward to as a community, as a town. It amazed me. I remember years ago driving through Morgan Hill, and I was first married with Don. We've been married now for 30 years. It's been a while. And he was an Eagle Scout advisor. I guess we were going. You were an advisor for summer camp.
Right,
I
for
believe.
Camp Ojedo.
Camp Ojedo. And I remember we were first married living in San Jose, and we were then traveling to Camp Ojedo via what they used to call Blood Alley,
Yeah.
which is, our Monterey freeway. And looking at this area and noticing just how beautiful it was. And San Jose was so congested and so crowded, and I thought, boy, this was back in 1970. This is the place where I think San Jose will grow. And I didn't mean it to myself in a negative sense, but I thought it was so very beautiful. But I had no idea that it would grow to such an extent and so quickly. So we moved out here for the beauty of it in 1976.
Yeah, it's a beautiful town. Beautiful town. It reminds me of old Santa Clara, growing up in Palo Alto, and they were going to keep Palo Alto a rural community back then. But coming here to Morgan Hill with the beautiful agricultural town, and especially in the springtime, seeing all the flowers and the trees in bloom, and we're ready for some more reports. Right here, Measure A, half-cent transit sales tax. Yes, 89,199, 69.4%. That's great. It's gone up. It looks like a percent or two, and we need the 2/3. We need the 66 and 2/3%. So that looks great. The no is 39,410, or 30.6%. And do we have Measure B? I'm sure that's coming up next. Boy, we're gaining. Yeah, we're getting closer.
Maybe our conversation has something to do with it.
I hope so.
Too late.
Yeah, a little bit late.
With Measure B and the Clean, Safe Creek and Natural Flood. Well, we have 245 of the 1,341 precincts reporting, and they're gaining a little bit. Now we're just about 1.5% away from being where it can pass. It's right now 79,907, or 65.2%, and the no's are 42,736. So, as Mayor had mentioned, that's very, very important for Morgan Hill, especially flood control here in the town of Morgan Hill. So, do we have some more results for everybody?
Just maybe we can just.
Oh boy,
we
look
got a lot of
at
results.
that! Those are
Why don't we
fast
just
results.
go ahead and flash these on the screen? I don't think we really have to read them, but just so our viewers can take a look. Just leave them on for a couple of minutes. If we see anything really exciting, maybe we'll jump up and down here.
Or the screen will.
Yeah, the screen will, yeah.
We can cut the mics for a while and take a break.
Yeah, why don't we
We'll
cut,
just
do
run
so?
the scroll.
So what we'll do is we'll run the scroll for a while so that you can be updated on this, on the election, and we'll take a short break. Pardon
Yeah,
me?
let's see the mayor vote here.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
What do
voted
you
for
need?
Mayor Kennedy
Is it
so
sound
he
vote?
could
Yeah. Don't
become
you
mayor.
just need one vote?
You can bet your house on that.
There's another one.
Oh,
One vote.
one vote. That's it, right? So you can go vote for yourself and your mayor.
I wrote him in for presidential candidate.
I bet.
Mayor Kennedy.
President Kennedy.
has agreed to it.
Well, are we on the mic?